What is your biggest, oh God, now I'm screwed moment? Story 4 brings back memories, and not in a good way. But hey, the age of innocence is what they call it. Stick around for that one. But first, story 1. Back in high school, many years ago, I punched out a guy who really had it coming. Later that night, a police officer showed up at my door to yell a little and let me know I'd be charged if it happened again. He asked for my ID as part of the conversation, and I handed him my wallet. He opened it, and his eyes fell on a picture of a young lady I knew from school. His eyes widened. At that moment, I made the connection. The cop had the same last name as my friend, and I knew her father worked in law enforcement. This officer was staring at a picture of his own daughter in the wallet of a long-haired, tattooed guy who was being reamed out. Screw my life was all I could think. Yowza! A cop's eyes widening was probably accompanied by a slow-motion zoom and a dramatic dun 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 sound effect in his head. Story 2. I was taking for the first time on the 4th of July, and I really had a whiz. My friend didn't want to come into this nice pizza shop because there were a lot of people inside, so I ventured in by myself. After waiting 15 minutes to get into the single-stall bathroom, I finally was able to sit down and whiz. Cue me blacking out on the toilet. Luckily, I was wearing my watch and was able to know I had fallen asleep for 25 minutes despite the fact it felt much longer. I awoke to a knocking sound and a woman's voice saying, "Are you okay?" Commence oh crap moment. After stumbling outside embarrassed, I realized my friend was nowhere to be found. I sat down in the middle of the sidewalk looking around like a lost child. Mind you, I'm a 21-year-old about ready to burst into tears at this point. Finally, a nice gentleman asked me if everything was all right and helped me find my friend who was laying in the grass around the corner. Story 3. When I went to take my final for Economics 101 during the summer session, I forgot to check the time that the test was at, so I assumed that it would be regular class time, 10 to 11 a.m.-ish. When I got there, the door was locked and the lights were off inside. Oh, and my GPA was so low that if I failed this class, I would be put on probation. It churned my stomach so much that I felt sick. I started looking up university protocols for late tests. There was no excuse except with justified emergencies. So I started writing an email to my prof begging for forgiveness. Then a guy from the class came by as I was going over grammar. "Hey, Yang, what's up?" Wait, what? Ready for the test, man?" "Wait, what? The test is later?" Man, I hugged the crap out of him. Story 4. I was in 6th grade. You know, the age hormones start to kick in at around 12 or 13. Girls are starting to develop, some much faster than others. So we were in the lunchroom, and I just kind of reached out and grabbed a girl's melons. I have no idea what came over me. But as soon as I did it, I looked at the teacher's table, and there were 3 teachers staring at me, as well as the assistant principal. He walks over, having never stopped eye contact, asks me to step outside the lunchroom, and then asks me, "Why did you do that?" I was all crap, but I told him that I was trying to grab her shoulder to get her attention, and she turned. He just smirked and said, "Yo, man, that was inappropriate. You will tell your friends you have to help me after school, and you will go straight home. Do not tell anyone I did this for you. Keep your hormones in check and your hands to yourself. Do you understand me?" I just looked at him, and I was in near tears. "Thank you. I'm so sorry." He said, "I'm going to walk you back in there. You're going to apologize to her, and I'm saying for you to meet me after school. Son, we all make mistakes. Learn from this one." He was my favorite person there for the next 3 years, and I learned that from experience. And we'll chalk that one up to experience too. Never making the same mistake again, right? Story 5. Okay, so my story happened a few nice years ago. The story might be a bit disturbing, mind you. I was at my now ex-girlfriend's place for the first time. She was my first girl, first kisses and stuff. Moreover, she and her family were strict Christians, which adds a little bit to the story. So we're making out for a few days straight, no intimacy before marriage, obviously, and my Willie was not used to that amount of feelings. I felt that it's getting overloaded down there, though I was afraid to get it off in my bed during the night because it might have stained their bedclothes. I tried to endure the whole sojourn there, but at one point it was just too much. I went to their very tiny toilet to relieve myself. I sat on the throne and started. It wasn't long until I got to the point, but the amount of love I had received back then was immense. Result, white walls, sink, floor, my clothes, everything. This was the biggest load in history. And just as I ceased to shoot and the feelings is finally gone, her dad starts to bump up on the door claiming that he just got diarrhea and that his bum is about to explode. 1,000,000 heartbeats per minute, my mind tries to think of the fastest and least noisy way of cleaning the cream. I yell to the father that I'm about to end and start the most awkward conversation in my life with him just to make sure he won't hear me wiping everything with the crap rolls. I ask him whether he ate something that could make his colon rage, and we literally talk about our poo history. When I'm quite done, I try to flush all the paper, and the bowl starts to overflow with water and everything comes up. I panic, rush out of there, hit the old guy with the door. He falls on the floor and craps himself. So, yeah, I'm like, screw my life, but they somehow swallowed this disgrace. Story 6. For one of my classes during the first semester of college, we had an attendance sheet that the professor would pass down individual rows. You would write your name and be done with it. Anyways, one day I was about 20 minutes late because of sleeping in. I sat in the very back and couldn't see my friends. I signed myself in, and when class ended, I left the classroom and waited for my friends. As soon as they saw me, their jaws just dropped. I was like, what? Immediately? And they told me they signed me in, aka my name had been on there twice. All I could think was, well, I'm screwed. The professor was strict on attendance and on forgery. What followed was about a month of proving that my signatures were my own for every single day of class that semester. I had to bring in official documents with variations of my signature. Luckily, it all worked out for me. My friend ended up failing the class because he signed me up that day, and that sucked. Story 7. The last novel I wrote revolved around a spy who inadvertently debunked her president's claims that an outlawed regime was trying to start a nuclear weapons program. It was a fictionalization of the start of the Iraq War with the female protagonist loosely similar to the real-life Valerie Plame. The week I sent out query letters to literary agents seeking representation, Valerie Plame announced that she was working with Sarah Lovett, a mystery writer, on a series of thriller novels from a real spy's perspective. Yeah, no one was interested in my novel once its inspiration was writing her own. Story 8. Last semester, I walked into a class and noticed that everyone was sitting there with something that looked like a paper in front of them. I sat down and nervously asked the kid next to me, what's that? As I pointed to the paper in front of him. Turns out it was a research paper that was never mentioned in class, only in the syllabus. The paper was 30% of the final grade. I was freaking out all day because I had already done terribly in the midterm. So I took some Adderall, spent 8 hours in the library, finished it, and handed it in the next morning. Came up with some BS excuse, and he didn't dock any points for being late. Everything went better than expected. Story 9. This is perhaps the stupidest thing I've ever done. I was at an outdoor wedding in Tampa, and it was hot, like middle of July in a black suit. I was sweating my jewels off. After the wedding, the reception started immediately and was very nice. I was dating the groom's sister, and we were at the big table with everyone she was related to. I drank a good amount of bourbon before the wedding and continued during the reception, and by this time, I was pretty hungry. There were buffets all around, and there was a prime rib buffet with horseradish sauce, and I was making a pig of myself on it. The post-wedding speeches had begun, and my girlfriend at the time's father was speaking about how wonderful everything was when a large piece of prime rib got lodged in my throat. No air was able to get by. I didn't know what to do, and for some reason, my intoxicated, polite self didn't want to make a scene. So I walked out to where the cars were parked in this field next to the tent everyone is in. I was trying to force it out and gave myself the Heimlich maneuver, and nothing was working. All of this had only been about a minute and a half, but I was sure I was going to pass away. I sat down in between these two cars and just said a few prayers and awaited my passing. About 3 minutes had now gone by, and this kid, who was probably 13, came out and was whizzing between cars about 10 feet away from me. I started slapping the car I was leaning on, and he turned around, and I guess I was bright red or blue, and I started making the choking sign, still sitting down. I was pretty weak at this point. He came up and kicked me very hard in the stomach, then retched some afterwards, I guess because of nerves. The kid wanted to call me an ambulance, but I told him I'd be fine, and I went to the bathroom and cleaned the tears off of my face, and I got my tie and suit back in order, but there was a huge grassy dirt mark where I just got kicked in the gut, also a fair amount of rib pain. I went and sat back down, got a beer, switched to chicken, and had a heck of a night. Later on that night, I gave the kid my pocket knife and told him thanks. Haven't eaten prime rib since. I don't know if I could ever not eat a prime rib for the rest of my life, but then again, a prime rib never almost took my life. Story 10. At the ripe old age of 16, I was sitting at home and the phone rang and my mother handed it to me. My girlfriend at the time told me she had something important to tell me. The words that followed changed my life forever. Muffnut, I'm pregnant. I threw my hat into my sister's kiddie pool as hard as I could and replied, "What the heck am I supposed to do now?" My girlfriend fired back with, "What the heck are you supposed to do? What the heck am I supposed to do?" And she hung up. Needless to say, it was quite the, oh God, now I'm screwed moment. My parents had given me the talk years before and left rubbers under my pillow. everything they could do to prevent their son from letting this happen. As I type this, my 11-year-old sits across from me working on her homework as her mother, my wife of almost 10 years, is happily by my side. Looks like we both figured out what the heck we were supposed to do real quick. Parents leaving rubbers under your pillow? They were playing the long game, but the universe had other plans, and I gotta say, I wish my parents were like that. Story 11. Back in high school about 9 years ago, my friend and I had a domain name where I set up a discussion board. I went to a small school and with about 120 students, so everybody knew everybody. The forum got popular around school for people to go to and complain about stuff like high schoolers. I was ecstatic to have a forum that actually has people in it. Then one day, I got a call telling me my buddy was arrested by the police because of the forum. I freaked out because I had no idea what was going on and knew I was next. Turns out he didn't get arrested, he was just questioned. Apparently, someone spoke badly about one of the teachers, and the teacher found it through an online search. The IT teacher printed off every page of the forums. He notified the police of wanting to press charges for libel. The student claimed he was shoved by a teacher at a sporting event. The teacher was a Vietnam vet who had a hot head, so it was plausible it did happen, and some other students claimed they saw it. I never got questioned by the police, but at school I was told to shut down the website or I could face suspension. I refused, saying we had rights against government institutions such as the high school. But I compromised. I made up a fake, sorry, we are shutting down due to recent events, closed door with a login and register button for the active forum. Story 12. I was in a class last semester where the final consisted of a partner project worth half of our grade. We finished the project the day before it was due, and I gave it to my partner to turn in. I was moving the next day. In the car the following afternoon, I sent a casual email to my professor thanking her for the great semester and explaining that my partner had dropped off the 23-page paper. I got an email almost immediately explaining that the paper would not be graded as it was never turned in. I found out later my partner had gotten wasted and slept through the due date. I had a second great semester in that class. You know what would be a total trip though after this? Was if his partner was the same partner he'd have again the second time around. Another great semester with another great partner. Story 13. On a university expedition to Trinidad and having a day off on the beach, it was one of those beaches where the water remains very shallow for a long way out. We had to wade out a good 300 meters for it to get up to our chests. Me and a friend, both strong swimmers, decided to swim out to a small island just off the coast. Just as we were approaching the island, I noticed something didn't seem right. We seemed to be moving closer very fast for the amount of effort I was putting into swimming. I stopped swimming and tried to tread water. My feet couldn't touch the bottom and we were moving along pretty fast. I just had this sudden, horrible, heart-sinking realization that we were in some sort of riptide and that it was going to pull us out between the headland and island and presumably out to sea. I realized later that the tide was changing and water was being forced between the relatively small and shallow gap between the headland and island, making for a very fast-moving flow of water. I yelled to my friend and we both decided the best we could do was angle towards the nearest bit of shore and swim as fast as we could. I was switching between front and back crawl to try and make sure I didn't tire myself out too quickly. Then my friend, who was much taller than me, yelled that he was able to touch the sand at the bottom and dig his feet in to hold his place. I kept swimming until I could do the same. It was amazing, standing, still leaning into the flow of water and seeing a wake appear behind us. We then were able to slowly make our way back by digging our feet into the sand and walking back to shore. Relief does not cover what I felt when I got back to safety. Story 14. I went to a boarding school and the principal, who had the widest hair you could ever imagine, had pretty much grounded the entire school for excessive drinking the previous weekend. We were confined to the dorms and only the main street in the small town for the whole weekend, and curfew was moved to 11, and no one was allowed to have any alcohol. 3 of my friends and I, who are not real troublemakers, decided we would go way out to the extremities of the town to a random bar where no one goes, just to have a couple of beers. Not to get intoxicated, but just to chill as a gang. Anyway, there we are drinking, sure that no one will find us, and all of a sudden, the whitest hair man walks in and lo and behold, it's our principal. As soon as we saw him, we had one of those collected crap moments. The 4 of us get escorted back to the dorms and we get grounded for another 2 weeks. The worst part of this whole story was that the people who got us grounded in the first place got super wasted at the main bar of the town where we usually go and were not even caught. Story 15. I went downstairs to watch some TV with my parents over winter break after having smoked 3 or 4 pretty milky waterfalls out of my window. I grossly overestimated my sobriety and started to paraphrase an episode of Cops I saw earlier to them. All was well until I got about halfway through the story and my mind went completely and utterly blank. I stared at them for at least 10 seconds. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. You can count Mississippis. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. 10, with my mouth moving up and down like a fish. And once my brain decided it would start to think again, I said something under my breath about the bathroom and hightailed it out of there. They must have known, right? Story 16. My moment was when I had a seizure about a year and a half ago, September 2010. I was eating lunch outside, and after I finished my main meal, I went to throw away my garbage. About 2 feet from the garbage can, I noticed an extreme feeling of numbness on the left side of my jaw. Then I lost my vision and hearing while still remaining conscious. The numbness spread across my body until I wasn't able to control my arms anymore. And somewhere in this 15 to 30-second period, I had an oh crap moment. I was terrified when I was physically unable to call for help, and I clearly remember that I started to debate in my mind if I was having a seizure or a stroke. A few seconds later, I passed out for about 15 minutes. I woke up to the ambulance doors opening and my stretcher being taken into the emergency room. When I woke up, I basically said to myself, crap, I just had a possible seizure or a stroke. Story 17. Probably the scariest moment of my life. I know it was for my friend. We were on a high school AP biology trip to Big Bend, lived in southern panhandle of Texas, with the rest of my class. My friend, call him Kevin, is a great guy, but was pretty awkward in every social aspect. His dad also happened to be the teacher of the class, so it didn't help much. We're hiking down this trail that eventually ends as a canyon that drops into a cliff called the Window Trail. Everything's great, and we're having a good time just walking the trail with everybody. On the way back, we heard some rustling and saw this doe run right by us, nearly hitting me. I dodged unnecessarily and scraped my knee up. As Kevin's friend is helping me up, we hear more rustling. We stand up and start moving to the sides of the canyon to give whatever's coming through a wide berth, and out jumps a mother frickin' mountain lion. Understandably, all of us freeze and pants crapping fear. The lion stops, but probably just because he's assessing the situation, probably not out of fear. Oh God, now I'm screwed. Kevin is the closest to the lion, probably 5 feet away. Then Kevin does the unthinkable. Without moving anything except one arm, he reaches into his pocket and puts his sunglasses on. Lion doesn't move. I exchange a glance with a couple of the girls. They are absolutely terrified. Kevin takes a step forward. What the heck? The lion doesn't move except to pull its head back a bit. I look at Kevin, trying to get his attention, tell him to chill the crap out, or we'll all pass away. He's staring intently at the lion, or I assume so, since he doesn't move his head and he just puts on sunglasses. He starts to move another leg, and the mountain lion starts to move back, so he freezes. After holding pose for another 15 seconds, Kevin finishes his sidestep and moves to the side, giving the lion room to continue. The lion continues to stare at him, then looks at all of us, 7 seniors, juniors in high school, then rears back and takes off the way the doe went. Kevin is immediately praised as tough and completely loses all awkwardness. Story 18. This happened when I was home from college one weekend. I was standing in my mom's kitchen at 3 a.m. in near darkness, stoned out of my mind and eating a bowl of Fruity Pebbles. My mom walks through the kitchen half asleep on her way to the bathroom. She probably would have not noticed that I was even there, except that I stop her and say, Wait, do you think that each color pebble in this cereal has its own flavor, i.e. red is cherry and yellow is lemon? Or do you think they all just taste the same? My brain immediately explodes with thoughts like, what the heck are you doing? And that is the most Spike thing you could have possibly said. She stops, looks at me and says, that's a good question. You should test that out. And just continues on her way. I ran to my bedroom when she was gone and locked the door, never did find out about the pebbles. And if you're enjoying the video as much as you enjoy a nice cold bowl of Fruity Pebbles, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Also, help me out. There's Fred Flintstone and then the guy with him on the box, the short one with blonde hair. What's his name? Bugging me, man. I'm going to go ahead and get back to some of the stories. Please let me know in the comment section below. Story 19. When I was 16, I was at a park with my girlfriend and friends getting spiked and intoxicated. It was somewhere around 1 a.m. and my friends were getting rowdy and noisy. Some people that lived there were shouting from their backyards for us to shut up, but my friends were too messed up to care and started yelling back at them. Minutes later, we heard the cop sirens and we all bolted, me and my GF in one car and the idiots in the other, and we both used different exits. There were only 2. Of course, the one I picked was the one the cops were coming in. I quickly parked the car and stopped the engine, and we both slide down our seats and hide for about an hour. The whole time we can see flashlights looking for us and whatnot. Eventually, they found us and asked us what we were doing, and I told them straight up that we were hiding, lol. They knew we were drinking, the smell, and of course asked for our license. Well, at the time, my dad was a diplomat. I had a tax exemption card. I was so messed up that I handed that to him. He was like, what the heck? Somehow he let us go, even though my GF confessed we had liquor in the trunk. I thought I was going to get into so much crap at the time, but now it's just a funny story. Story 20. A hippie friend of mine gave me some special brownies at a concert, told me they were very potent and be careful, whatever. So after the concert, I ate one brownie, nothing. I eat another brownie, nothing. I eat one half of the third brownie, still nothing. Okay, whatever. I get in my car and start to drive home. The entrance onto the interstate was one of those big loopy-loops, so as I'm driving into the circular loop and accelerating up to interstate speed, suddenly I leave my body and find myself about 3 to 4 feet outside my car, looking at myself, driving my car. Terror. When the loop was done and I straightened the car out, I slammed back into my body. I am white-knuckling the steering wheel as the interstate underneath me and the cars around me merge into some kind of weird, fuzzy, hazy alternate reality. A reality in which I'm unable to assess how fast I'm going or how fast other cars are moving in relation to me, and I'm convinced I'm going to pass away. The sky starts to melt, my radio is blasting, and I can't remember how to turn it off. I feel like I'm going like 130 miles per hour. Speedometer reads 40, speed limit is 65, cars are flying by me, honking at me and screaming at me. There's no shoulder to the interstate. I see a sign for an exit 3/4 of a mile ahead, the longest 3/4 of my life in my entire life. Somehow I get off the interstate without causing like a 50-car pileup, find a Motel 8, lay down on the bed and freak out for about 3 solid hours, ordered up some corn and tried to forget it happened. Well, lucky for us, he didn't forget it happened because who can forget taking 2.5? The real question though, what happened to that last half of the last brownie? Your theories and conspiracies down below in the comments. I'm looking forward to reading them. Story 21. February or March 1999, Swedish Air Force. We were checking on all our spread out depots and equipment storages, which included driving across a mostly unused airfield. Well, I wanted to find out just how fast we could go in our brand new Passat TDI, so I drove down to one end of the landing strip and gunned it. By the time we hit the taxi lane at the other end, we were going close to 110 miles per hour. Not bad at all. However, this is when both me and my passenger realized that while the airstrip was nice and dry, the taxi lane is covered in ice, as the sun must have not been able to reach it throughout the winter months. Straight up ahead is a solid line of trees, and the car really isn't slowing down at all despite the full-on ABS brakes. At this point, the other guy in the car yells at me that I've ended us both. The trees approach rapidly, and all I'm thinking is, crap, why did I do this? But then all of a sudden, the car finally manages to get a little bit of grip, and a couple of seconds later, we come to a complete stop in fairly deep snow, less than a foot away from the trees. No damage at all to the car, and more importantly, us. After a while, we managed to get the car back onto the taxi lane and we drive on. Thankfully, our officers never found out. Story 22. I was riding my bike with my lady roommate through the park. She was giving me some girl advice because I was having an issue. I was about to visit my hometown for work, meaning I would see my newly singled ex, whom I had just gotten back in touch with. Problem is, I had just begun to see someone and it was getting serious a little too fast for me. I went into detail about how much I liked my GF, but I still had serious feelings for my ex, who I never had any real closure with, and whom I honestly wanted to see and make out with a bunch. She hadn't indicated any desire to rekindle things just to catch up, but it got me thinking. I was being ruthlessly candid about my ideas about the future with the GF when I got a text from her telling me that my phone had pocket dialed her and she heard our entire convo. Understandably, she dumped my bum. I went on the trip and awkwardly hung out with my ex and her new boyfriend. Story 23. When I was 12, my cousins and I discovered a box with VHS corn videos, you know? My older cousin, 13, immediately knew what it was and wanted to take it home. He unfortunately couldn't because he had to help his dad and had no way of transporting it to his house. So he put the task on me and my younger cousin, he was 10, to deliver the tape to his house and use a sleepover as an excuse. My mom was out of town and my dad didn't allow me to go, hence I entrusted my cousin with the video. He was 10 but still understood that getting caught with the video would get him in trouble. So he proceeds with taking the video to his house and places it under his pants. Of course, he being super scrawny, the tape was very visible and got caught. His brother then proceeded to tell his mom that it was a corn video and tried to play it on the VCR. That's when I thought that everything was going to the crapper. Luckily, the VCR ruined the tape and was unable to play it. My aunt still gave us all a scolding I could still remember to this day. She called my mom, international call by the way, and my 13-year-old cousin's mom, but didn't tell my dad. He would have beaten the crap out of me, or hi, same for him. However, she warned me and my older cousin that if we made our cousin do something like that again, she would tell our dads next time. And we never did that again. Story 24. I do programming for control systems in public works water departments. Anyways, one day I accidentally hit a key switch on the PLC, which is basically a computer that controls the entire plant, and switched it to stop operating. Well, all the inlet valves to the plant closed. Meanwhile, 4 groundwater wells were pumping at about 1,000 GPM into the plant. The pressure went from 30 psi to about 120 psi. I didn't notice until one of the couplings of the piping in the plant began to shoot out water. I had no clue what the problem was, and while I was trying to figure it out, a few high-pressure burst valves broke to relieve pressure, shooting water onto the plant floor at an outrageous amount. I ran to the control screen and shut off all the wells till I could figure out what the problem was. The city was a little upset. I thought I was going to basically lose my job, but my boss was just like, well, crap happens. For about 15 minutes, though, I was like, oh my God, I am so screwed. Story 25. On my first day with my ex-partner, I was cooking at home, had dessert ready on the bench, defrosted a little, and decided it would be a good idea to climb across the slightly slanted roof next to my balcony and look at the moon from the flat balcony across the way. We did so, it was all lovely, then when trying to get back, realized it had gotten cold, and the slanted roof had covered in condensation and was now a slippery ice slope of doom. Neither of us could climb back across the slanted roof without falling into the 2-story concrete hole between the 2 buildings. So my only option was to call the fire brigade, who came and upon assessing the situation, had to smash the top window of the restaurant that was under the flat roof and walk 2 19-year-olds barefoot and going through an expensive eatery where I was met by 2 police officers and charged with trespassing. Yikes, from romantic moonlit balcony to slippery ice slope of doom in record time, huh? Talk about a date that escalated quickly, not in the way we normally want it to go. Story 26. I used to be a motocross racer a few years ago. I was fastish, but not exactly pro. I was at a practice track one day and inevitably got into a pride race with another rider. We came around a corner and hit the takeoff to jump literally side by side. Suddenly, I realized 3 things. First, he has backed out of the jump at the last second and has landed on top of the jump. 2, he is preparing for the next corner by moving to his left. And 3, I'm still airborne and it looks very likely the track he will be occupying in a few seconds is the same exact piece of track as me, and 200 pounds of high-revving hot steel and plastic is going to hit the ground. Now, this presents a problem for me, as I now know I'm going to be involved in a huge wreck, and there's absolutely positively crap all I can do about it. After being in the air for quite a while, I finally land maybe an inch to his right and just behind him. At this point, he turns right, wipes out my front wheel, and I am catapulted over him and hit the deck hard. Now, a lot of my MX tracks have ditches or large areas dug out around the track to allow water to drain away. This track had a lake which I was now sonic rolling towards with all the style of an intoxicated giraffe. I enter the depths in full racing gear, helmet, goggles, neck race, a lot. I crawl out, soaking and freezing and about twice as heavy. I return to my bike intending to ride it back to the pits. As I pull in the clutch, an intense pain shoots up my left arm. So, all in all, I've had better laps, but the guy I hit was pretty cool and even signed my cast, which was nice of him, schmuck. Story 27. My mother used to own a restaurant where she used my brother and I as free labor. Needless to say, I wasn't happy with this. One day, she asked me to work from opening to closing. Reluctantly, I agreed and proceeded to do so. To make my day go faster and to remotely enjoy myself, I would take the customer's order and shout it back to the kitchen in an overly redundant and disgusting way. So, for example, if someone ordered braised beef shanks with a side order of lasagna with bechamel sauce, white sauce, I'd shout back in the most unprofessional Chinese accent I could muster, "I need 1 order of the beef and the lasagna with extra cream of samyang." What I didn't know was that on that day, the health inspector was dining there at that specific moment. Let's just say he isn't one for jokes. Long story short, the restaurant was closed for 4 days after pending a health investigation. My mom whooped my bum for those 4 days. I will never, ever work in a restaurant setting ever again. Story 28. When I was 15, my mother did not allow me to smoke cigarettes. However, that didn't stop me. We lived out in the boonies, so I would go walk the dogs and take a smoke and a lighter in my pocket. One day, as I was walking away towards the path with my hands in my pocket so that the lighter and smoke would not fall out, I heard her yell, "What the hell's in your pocket?" She made me show her, so I pulled out the lighter and not the smoke. "What do you need a lighter for?" was her next question. As I stammered and she stood in the doorway, my cat booked it out of the house. This allowed me time to hide the smoke as we looked for the cat. Story 29. I had to leave from the Netherlands for an 8 a.m. flight. The last money I had was €20, and I spent 10 of it on grass. I stayed out the night before flight, nowhere to go, to have a last smoke, and the other 10 was supposed to go on a train ticket to the airport. I gave my bike kindly away to a stranger and stepped on a train. What I didn't know was there was some kind of trouble with the route, so I had to switch trains in Leiden, which of course I couldn't possibly know because I don't speak Dutch. So when the train reached Leiden, it just came back. So after 20 minutes, I was back where I started, without my money and my plane leaving in an hour. I literally shed a tear for my ultimate failure. My mom bought me the plane ticket back home, and she already had trouble by accidentally buying 2 tickets. Luckily, was unable to cancel one, didn't know it then though. I was so fed up with Holland and the last worst thing had just happened. No money, no place to stay, wasted tickets. I went to some train station worker and told him my story. All he could help me with was just to tell the same story to the guy who's going to ask me for the ticket on the train. Luckily, there was a Dutch guy next to me asking also some kind of questions about the route change. He realized he was going to be late, so he took a cab and was kindly offering me a ride. You can imagine the feeling that ran through me when this happened. I felt saved. If you read this, kind Dutch guy who went to Slovenia to visit his girlfriend in July 2009, I freaking thank you with all of my heart. Story 30. When I was a sophomore in high school, I just started smoking grass. I used to scrounge lunch money, birthday money, etc., and then buy a gram when I could. I'm not the fiend that this makes me sound like. Anyways, I got home after a rather long dry spell, and my parents weren't home. They used to come home a couple hours after I left school. The spike you get from grass has a half-life of approximately 90 minutes. So I figured I'd be good by the time my parents got home. I smoked a couple of giant bowls. I debated going outside to toss a can and aluminum foil in the trash can in the garage and put the grass in my super secret hiding spot under a brick by the side of my house. But it was really cold, Michigan, so I figured I'd do it later. I went inside, grabbed a bunch of junk food, plopped on my couch, and set everything down beside me and started watching TV. I woke up to my furious dad smacking me as he held up my can and bag of grass and scanning over my junk food covered body. Story 31. So this was in 2010. I was 15 and it was my under 16s rugby end of year celebration. I was pretty happy I got best and fairest that year, and now it was the annual scratch match we did every year. I had the ball, I'm a forward, and had just broken through the pack and was legging it for my life because I had the fastest guy in our team hot on my tail. I looked back to see him slowing down with a puzzled look on his face. At that time, it clicked that I was probably about to run into a tree or something. We were playing in a park, not the proper field. I turned to look where I was going and was surprised when I hadn't seen a tree, but a swarm of a few hundred European wasps. I hit the swarm and it felt like a brick wall. Me being highly allergic to bees freaked the crap out and started running harder and faster than I ever had to get away from the swarm so that my mother could come and help me without putting herself at risk. In the end, I had about 50 stings on my back, about 12 on my face, and about 8 on my left hand. Luckily, I went to the hospital and survived. There was a picture that I had on my phone, but I lost that a long time ago. Story 32. I used to have panic attacks. I swear they had nothing to do with stress or whatever emotional state I was in. They just came and went completely at random. The first one happened in the middle of Washington, D.C. on the hottest day of the summer. I was in D.C. attending some BS conference at the Ronald Reagan building. Walked outside and boom, heart rate went through the roof, started blacking out and hearing nothing but TV static and my own booming heartbeat. Peripheral vision gone. My thoughts, so this is how I pass away in the back of some grimy Washington, D.C. ambulance sometime after I collapse and somebody decides to call 911. Crap. Bear in mind, it's about 104 degrees out. I'm drenched in sweat, but too proud to do anything like wail my arms and ask for help. Suddenly, a cleaning person exits a bank ATM foyer carrying a vacuum cleaner. I dash in right behind her looking like I belong because I happen to be wearing a tie. The little ATM room had the sweetest air conditioning I ever felt in the world. I leaned over a vent, sucked in the cold air, and started feeling normal little by little. I walked back to the conference and chugged as much water as I could and took some aspirins to thin out my hemoglobin in case I was actually having a heart attack, and then I carried on like normal. I never did see a doctor about it or said anything to anybody. I've had a few more panic attacks over the next few years, but then they mysteriously went away just as they mysteriously appeared. Story 33. I'm a diver and I was learning a new dive off the 3 meter. It was a reverse 2.5 tuck. I took off the board and everything was going great, flipping tight and fast, great height. I was waiting for my coach to call me out. When the coach yells and you kick out and reach for the water, we use calls on new dives. We're just learning. Anyways, I hear the call and I just don't react right away. I flipped a little extra and reached straight out in front. Basically, everything was wrong with the end of my dive. It was then I had the oh crap moment. There was a moment of stillness, like time stopped for a split second, and I thought, this is gonna hurt. And I landed flat on the water, knocked the wind out of me and the whole 9 yards. My hot dog hurt the most. It was on fire. My teammates loved it though. I had bruises for about 2 weeks all over my thighs and chest. Hilarious. Story 34. In Costa Rica, I went white river rafting. My brother assured me we would be fine going on some of the tougher rivers, and I wasn't too worried about it. We show up and they split us up into groups. We get paired with two skinny Japanese women. So there I am looking at my group, and we have my father with hip issues, my out of shape bum, two skinny Japanese women with zero upper arm strength, and my buff brother. Then the instructor decides to put my brother and my dad on one side, so I have to balance the other side of the boat in oar strength. We start going, and as predicted, the Japanese women aren't really paddling and just sort of hitting the water. I'm in the front, and the second the speed starts to pick up, I go flying out of the boat. I start freaking the crap out and trying to get up. Little did I know, the more you resisted, the more you were sucked down. I eventually got sucked under a rock, and the light went away as the water pushed against my ears. I hadn't given up yet and was still trying to get out. Then I feel my brother's hand on my life jacket. He starts pulling me up, and just as I start to see sunlight, I anticipate breathing. Too bad. I get sucked down even further for some reason and take in a huge gulp of river water. At this point, I am accepting passing away, and I stop moving. I close my eyes and I feel a rush, and all of a sudden I feel myself breathing air. I look over and my brother is also in the water telling me to stay on my back and don't move. I floated a bit down the river and some kayaks cornered me so I would stop moving. I got back in the boat and paddled 2 more hours with my full strength. Scariest day of my life. Story 35. Right, it's pretty dumb, but here goes. I was at the ski slopes with some of my friends. I was on skis and my friends on snowboards. I'm not very good, so I was kind of trying to follow the other guy's lead and just not screw up too much. So the slope isn't too big. Instead of gondolas, the lifts are these hooks on zip wires you slide between your thighs. So one of my friends is on the hook ahead of me, another behind. At the top of the lift, there's a big pile of snow left by the slope machines, also I guess to stop people going around the bend. So I've been up and down a few times, and I'd noticed that the end of the lift was a bit lower than the start of the slope. You had to loosen your skis and just walk a few meters to get over the slope. My friend in front solved this little problem by hanging onto the hook up the pile of snow and then easily gliding over the slope without having to rearrange everything. Great, I'm doing well so far, not screwing up, so I figured I'd do the same. So here goes. Slide the hook in front, hold on with both hands up the pile, fall on my bum, and roll down the other side. Great. So I'm lying there, feeling pretty dumb for falling. My friend in front starts shouting something, say up, which translates to look out. What I hear is stau up, meaning get up. So I get up just to see my friend that was behind me doing the same thing as us up the snow pile. Just as he's at the top letting the hook go, I remember thinking, oh, this is going to hurt a lot, before the hook landed in my forehead. I still have a big scar and probably frontal lobe damage, who knows. Hook lifts still scare the crap out of me. And if you learn a thing or two from these stories, maybe some of them life-saving, scar-saving, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video. Thanks for watching.